Good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you are. My name is Tim Sheldon, and this is the Montessori Foundation's weekly webcast on Thursdays called Independent School Leaders Forum. Hopefully, you have been here before. Some of you may be with us for the first time. If you could, put into the chat who you are, what school you're with, what state and city you're in. We'd love to know who you are, just in case some of you are new. This is intended not to be a lecture. This is deliberately not a webinar. We are using a meeting format, which means that any of you can turn on your camera if you want. I realize many of us at 1 o'clock Eastern time may be eating lunch or answering the phone or working on email and multitasking. It's perfectly normal, but it is just fine to join in a conversation. We were supposed to have the CEO of Reflection Sciences, and something may have happened. Reflection Sciences is an organization that many of us have worked with for years. They are in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area, and they developed some years ago a well-researched tool that's used to evaluate the development of executive function skills in young children. It actually can be used with adults. What I think makes it appealing to a lot of people is that the MEFS, or MEFS, which stands for Minnesota Executive Function Scale, as I recall, is is um, is a tool that can be used in really under 10 minutes. I think it's only about 5 minutes for the average child taking it. And it's used multiple times. I mean, you can give it as whenever you want to very, very young children. I understand that they now have a digital version of the test with a somewhat different name, but I know that the one that is used by the National Center for Montessori in the public sector is as far as I know, is done with cards. Very easy to use in a classroom, just taking a child aside um, at any time of the day. And again, what you're getting is multiple hits over years of how a child's executive function skills are developing. Now, I don't pretend to be an expert in executive function skill knowledge. There's a lot to it. Um, but it certainly includes all the things that we know from Angela Duckworth. It's perseverance, what they call grit, ability to organize, resist temptation, stay on task, lots of different things that are predictive of your ability to learn new skills and accomplish things throughout your lifetime. Um, Now, I do want to mention again, if it were me, I would use all three of the tools that I've mentioned in a school on an ongoing basis. I would use the MEFS. I would use the DERS, DERS, Developmental Environmental Rating Scale, which is really looking at something different. And when this was first proposed, the idea was that there would be a correlation, a strong positive correlation between a environment or a classroom. Because again, remember that DERS is not measuring children. It's not even measuring the teacher. It's measuring how is the environment functioning in terms of what we think of as environmentally normal or optimal for a Montessori program. It certainly includes what are the adults doing, what are the children doing with each other, with the children, and how is the environment itself set up. And I think that, it's an incredibly useful tool to have. A little bit expensive. It costs, give or take $400 or $500 to set it up for your school. I think every year you're supposed to get a license for about $350. The National Center and the Montessori, excuse me, the National Center for Montessori in the Public Sector is the originator of that particular tool. And they also provide a bundle where you can use DERS or DERS with the MEFS. And I think that, the evidence is very strong that a classroom that is high on the DERS scale time after time is going to produce children that are high on executive function. So I think it's very, very interesting. The other thing I mentioned, and I'm sorry that I didn't invite those people to be with us today, is the founders of Chancy and Bruce. They were with Lindsay and I a number of times over the last couple of months. They're out in California. You can look them up, Chancy and Bruce. By the way, that's the name of the last names of the two doctors that created the thing back in the hmm, early, no, it's 40 some years ago. It was developed. It's incredibly useful, affordable, convenient test. You do not need a PhD or a degree as a clinical psychologist, and yet it gives most of the information that we get from a WISCAR. So if you've got a young child who is just a little quirky and you're trying to figure out what's going on, well, it's not going to get them an IEP in your local district. It will give you and the parents incredibly useful, detailed, formal information that you can use in planning their program, in talking, or in going to the public school district to figure out, how do we get this child services that they need? So again, if it were me, I would do all three. I'm going to turn off the waiting room. I noticed that Lisa is coming back. So at least one person had trouble getting in. So hold on just a second. Let me turn off the waiting room. Hi, Lisa. So before we get any further, I'd like to ask, there's a number of us who are adult educators, teacher trainers, school consultants, heads of schools. Do you use any of these tools? And what are your thoughts about executive function and why that's important in thinking about children, talking to parents, and working with teachers in their own continuing professional development? Anyone want to jump in?
I'll jump in.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi. I have my screen off because I'm at the beach and I don't want to be a distraction, but I decided to turn it on. We have used DERS. We focus on scaffold executive functioning as a priority at school. I think part of it is my mom's background. She worked at the Genesee School, which is for kids with dyslexia. So that growing up on that was always intriguing to me. And then I found Montessori, which is individualized for everybody. And I love that. And between the executive functioning and the Montessori and the independence, it's just really evident consistently that learning needs that framework. If you don't have the executive functioning piece, it interferes with the actual learning. And I have found that almost every child can benefit with some sort of scaffolding. I consider executive functioning a life skill. I consider that part of our practical life curriculum, and we use it that way.
That's great. Anyone else have anything to share or any questions? John, how about you? What are your thoughts?
I just took a bite out of my sandwich.
Oh, don't worry.
First of all, I agree completely with Lisa. We use DERS and MEFS in my school. If you look at the little list of comments, I'm retired now, but um, from my point of view, um, if you don't have the executive function, the rest of it doesn't even matter because the classroom environment can only survive intact when children have a higher level of executive function than most children are likely to do without that kind of nurturing. Um, 3 years before I retired, which was in 2021, um, I applied to convert my school from a private to a public charter. And in the charter application, um, I listed results from DERS and MEFS and a third instrument that my faculty developed as being part of the way we would be graded by the state. And the folks at the state who approved our charter application, I don't know, I think it just went in one ear and out the other, or, in their eyes and out their ears, because they didn't pay any attention to it. And they didn't care what our results were in terms of executive function. So it was hugely frustrating for me when they would grade us on math and language. That was all they cared about.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, as for the third instrument, I don't remember the name of it now, but we developed it in would have been about 2017, I guess. And it was a simple checklist of behaviors that the teacher would mark down for each of the children about 3 times a year. So when it came time for parent conferences, uh, the parents who want to know how well does my child read, can my child do math, in addition to the standard kind of feedback we would give them, and on um, DERS, we would also give them a, a, a classroom guides firsthand observation. And that would evolve over time so the parents could see not only a tool that was that the result came out of an iPad, but they could also see what their teacher said about their child during in this little instrument that we developed, and it looked at the same kinds of things that we observers look for: children helping children, children concentrating, children working independently, and so on. But it was from the teacher's direct observation, and so we use that to supplement the the Minnesota Executive Function Scale.
I think it's a great idea. I wonder if anyone has ever seen the what's called the DOG. Uh, DOG stands for Dimensions of Observable Growth. It's developed out in Golden, Colorado by the Walton Foundation, and I don't remember the organization they found. I want to say Great Lessons or something like that. But it's very, very interesting. If you look it up, Google it, Dimensions of Observable Growth, it gives a lot of what you're talking about, John. And it's basically looking at ways of looking at how children develop normalization. Um, and it's very, very sophisticated for social emotional learning. I think we've incorporated it into Montessori Compass. Um, and go ahead. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Tim. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted to add a little bit about the executive function and how I noticed it as a teacher trainer. So at MIAS, I'm a teacher trainer of sensorial, and I've been doing that for about 6 years. And recently I started teaching math as well. And I noticed in the past couple of years, executive function is a big deal in the philosophy part. And it usually comes in, I teach for the primary age group. And it comes in usually when we're talking about how we only have one pink tower in the classroom, one set of brown stairs in the classroom. So that leads into discussions about how the children have the independence to assess where who's using what materials are available, what they can use, if they really want to use this material that's currently being used, how they plan around it, and what they should do instead while they're waiting. And also with the kindergartners, because we want the 3 to 6 room, we have the kindergartners, and it helps them planning their day and their week with all the work they need to get done. So it's kind of like classroom management for the teachers, these upcoming teachers that I'm teaching. So executive function has played a really big part in that.
That's great. Please, anyone else want to jump in? Nikki Magnuson, the CEO of Chancy and Bruce, is driving out in the Los Angeles area, but she is going to log in a moment, and she'll be able to join us and contribute her own thoughts about this as well. So I think, even though we don't have Isaac, and we will invite the folks from Reflection Sciences to come back at another time. But again, the bottom line is we're the right people, right? And I'm so glad you're here. And Lisa, I appreciate that you're at the beach. Kelly, it's always good to see you, and I couldn't agree with you more. Sheila, you're a longtime teacher trainer. What are your thoughts about this whole thing? How do you get a handle on young kids who are quirky?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, and I had a young child that was quirky and had significant impairment with executive function, and I taught for a long time, and now, like Kitty, I'm with early childhood teachers in residency in 2 weeks. I think that there it's a challenge if the adults are not regulated as well. So the professional development for those teachers is really important. It needs to be ongoing in order for them to understand how to regulate themselves so that then the children have models for that in the classroom. Um, I also think that spending time in the classroom before children actually enter is really important to really make sure it's a where the child's skills are, even at a 3-year-old level. You can certainly see where they are emotionally from a language perspective, and executive function planning flexibility. I think that helps inform the classroom placement for the child. So lots of different angles on it, but it's always really interesting to hear conversation around executive function, and the Reflection Science is a new organization for me. So
Oh, I'm
interested in
glad you learned
learning.
about
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
yeah, take a look at that. And again, for all of you, really, if you've got early childhood, I really, really recommend that you reach out to Chancy and Bruce and look at them too. So both of those organizations have strong websites. It's easy to get information. I should mention that Chancy and Bruce fell in love with Montessori, is getting very involved in the movement, even though none of them are Montessori trained. And they are offering some kind of incredibly low cost. I mean, think about what it costs to have a WISCAR or a developmental screening done on a young child, usually in the thousands. They, I think we can get trained and certified through them online, as I understand it, for under $300. And the actual cost to administer to a child and get the formal, really fancy looking report back for the family and for us is about $35. Normally it's 150. So, if Nikki is able to join us, I've got to say I think very highly of what she has brought to the table recently. So they're all good people. What I know is that all of us are hearing from teachers and fellow administrators that more and more children are showing up in the classrooms who are disorganized. They seem to be neurodivergent. They're unregulated. I mean, and this all has to do with executive function. So we can argue, is it microplastics in their brain? Is it lead poison? Who knows what's causing it? We don't know. What we know about it is a diagnosis, but knowing the cause is lovely if you can change it. But we've got the real child in front of us. And what we know is if we can figure out what's going on and develop a plan of how we can meet that need, every little bit of energy when they are under 6 is profoundly magnified in terms of our ability to make a difference in that child's future. And so many of our teachers are just pulling out their hair, feeling like they don't know what to do. I wasn't trained to do this. And they're right, they weren't. And yet, these are the kids we've got, and we've got to meet them where they're at and do the best we can for them without feeling guilty about not being better than who we are. But I think it always comes back to, if we can, let's help our teachers to grow a bit, to stretch a bit, and to breathe, because we don't want people burning out. I mean, it's not their fault that they don't know what to do. On the other hand, we as school leaders, we can't simply say only non-neurodivergent children are welcome, because first off, we don't see the neurodivergence when they first show up. It emerges. And what are you going to do? Throw them out? I mean, it's like taking a child in your home and saying, I'm not going to adopt you anymore. I'm going to send you back to the orphanage. We can't do that. So any of these tools that help us to get a better grip on what we're dealing with and help our teachers to feel more empowered is, in my opinion, is really incredibly helpful to the bigger picture.
Can I throw out a question?
Please do.
It occurred to me that as I was thinking back about my experience with DERS and MEFS, I wonder if there's any advantage to exposing those instruments to adult learners who are going through their Montessori preparation, just off the top of my head. I mean, I know that you can't really evaluate a Montessori classroom even when you're a brand new certified teacher. It takes several years to be able to read all the pieces. But I wonder if it might be useful. Well, to repeat the question, might it be useful to expose uh, people into those instruments before they take over their classroom?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I'm a great believer that teacher training needs to prepare people as well as we can. So, for example, I've always argued since the online tools began to come online that we need to train teachers in training how to observe properly and how to use tools like Montessori Compass, Transparent Classroom, whatever, and how to do a real observation. I know we, in theory, we do it, but I think most people would say that most of our teachers they're not doing a lot of observing. They're not really keeping good records. They don't really know what to look for or what they're looking at. Anything that gives us a better understanding and tools like this, anything that gives us formative assessment of a child's development that allows us to build up a picture over time of how children are growing and changing is incredibly useful. Kind of like
Yeah.
radar, right?
Does anybody know of any teacher education program that exposes adult learners to those instruments?
I don't. I mean, I know what the argument has always been. We don't have the time. Our people are always
Yeah,
over.
I know, exactly. But they have to do X amount of hours of classroom observation anyway. And so if they had that tool to kind of guide their observations, how often do you see this? To what intensity do you see that kind of thing? I don't know. It might be ramping up the quality of classroom observation to begin with.
We probably need to reach out to the MACD board.
Hey, Tim. Joyce Pickering also has professional developments that cover some of this, and her website is pretty comprehensive as to what levels of introduction and training that they offer. And she's Montessori. It's a Montessori program for children who are neurodivergent.
Absolutely. And you know, that's the gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the school.
The one in
Joyce
Dallas?
Pick, yeah.
Shelton. The
Shelton,
Shelton.
yes. And the Shelton Institute. Yes, they have very good resources. I just got the head of the Reflection Sciences phone number. Hello, Patricia, how are you? I'm just
Doing
gonna,
good, thank you.
I'm gonna send the gentleman from Reflection Sciences a text quickly just in case. Hello, Nikki, how are you? I see you
Hi.
pulled over, side of the road in LA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, actually in San Diego, but yes, I have a friend here that owns a store, so I asked her if I could just come inside for a few minutes. So yes, here I am. Hi, thanks for having me.
Let me introduce Dr. Nikki Magnuson. She is the president CEO of Chancy and Bruce, which is an organization that's been around for what, more than 40 years,
Mhm.
but mostly in California and just now beginning to be known outside of California, especially the Montessori community. So we've been saying good things about you. Tell us who you are and what you're doing.
Thank you. Well, it's an honor to be here, and anytime Tim has invited us to be a part of something, we always are grateful to do that. And share a little bit about myself. I've been in education 28 years. I've worked in both public and private school. And 4 years ago, my business partner and I purchased a company called Chancy and Bruce. And they did one thing and one thing really well was to get kids ready for kindergarten by looking at pathways, not the academics. So kind of anti what the world looks like at now is like, can they read? Can they write? Are they ready for kindergarten and starting that rigor of academics? Instead, we look at the motor skills, the fine and gross motor skills, the visual skills, visual memory, visual discrimination, the auditory skills, auditory memory, auditory discrimination, the language skills, expressive language and receptive language, and then comprehension, and the most important is social emotional. So we've been lucky enough to partner with several Montessori schools and training them on this assessment. It's a 20 to 40-minute one-on-one assessment. And we have a whole bag of hundreds of little things that you pull out based on the age level. And you do those 9 pathways based on the child's age. And then we have these really nice 4-page printouts that parents love to see. And it really levels up the school because they're like, wow, we get all this information for my 4-year-old or my 3-year-old or my 5-year-old about their development, and it does their chronological and developmental age match. And that's what we're looking at with Chancy and Bruce.
And one of the things I really appreciate, again, about what Nikki and her team represent is it's very easy, it's very affordable, and she's also developed, I guess you developed a curriculum, which is really used in a non-Montessori traditional program for children who need the gift of another year, what we would call another year of 4-year-old education to prepare them for kindergarten. But one of the theses that you've got, Nikki, is that this may, in some way, shape, or form, be useful to Montessori educators because they can literally select, once they understand how the evaluation scheme works, they could literally, if they wanted, license or purchase the curriculum that teaches specific things, where there might be an area where there's things that you've developed that might be helpful to a Montessori educator who's working with a child who needs more than what we know how to do. And I think that's something we need to look at more carefully, all of us together.
Yes, as educators, we're always problem solving. So one of the things I noticed is when we were giving out these results, and a student who's 5 years old might be 3 years old in visual memory. And it's kind of, we give them the scores, and the teachers and the administrators and the parents are asking us, what do we do with this? How do we specifically target that visual discrimination or let's just say visual memory skill? And so we never want to touch a Montessori curriculum. It's amazing. It's the foundation of everything that Montessoris do. But this is more of the intervention. It kind of gives you that additional support to specifically target that specific pathway where the child might be struggling. And so, for example, if it's visual memory, we have hundreds of lessons, 185 lessons per pathway. So you could literally teach a lesson every single day throughout the year on visual memory, activities to promote visual memory, and things for the parents to do also as well. Some of them are, most of them are obviously play-based, but some of them do require, I wouldn't say a worksheet, but an example of a worksheet would be a page, and it has 5 different symbols, 5 different, they're almost like doodles. And the child would look at one of the doodles, you would cover it up, and then you say, okay, try to remember what you saw and recreate that. They could do it in sand, they could do it on their hand, they could do it on a whiteboard, they could do it with a pencil and paper, but we're really training their brain to see something and trying to replicate it, because later on when they're writing, they're going to need to be able to do that as well when they get into their into literacy.
So I see we've been joined, by the way, by our original guest, Isaac Van Wesep, CEO of Reflection Sciences, the authors of MEFS. And I'm so glad you joined. I just learned from Isaac they never got the invitation and link. So I'm glad you're here, my friend. So
yeah, sorry about that, Tim. I apologize.
No, don't worry. We have a number of teacher trainers, school consultants here. Not a big group because, again, it's almost July 4th and people are not coming, but we do record this, and it will. We've had a lot of people express concern of will they get the recording. And your partner from the National Center of Montessori Education in the Public Sector, David Ayers, says to say hello and asked me to remind everyone that you all partner. And again, you've got people here who have used MEF for years. So we're welcome. We're glad you're here. We also, by the way, in case you don't remember, we have Dr. Nikki Magnuson from Chancy and Bruce, who I've been putting the two of you guys together because I think you are an excellent match.
Yes, shout out to Isaac. I have met Isaac before, and he does amazing things. So I'm happy to pass on the mic to him to finish out this webinar.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's nice to see you again, Dr. Magnuson, and thanks a lot for inviting me, Tim. I appreciate it. So who here on this call is familiar with the Minnesota Executive Function Scale already? Maybe, I don't know if a show of hands or
Well, they're not all. Most people don't have their cameras on,
ah,
but I think what we have is a mix. There are some people that haven't seen it before. Rikita, have you seen it? Rika, sorry.
No, I haven't seen it. I'm
Well,
from India, so we don't have access to this, but I'm very intrigued with a lot of work happening there. So I'm like joined the thing. Yeah.
okay. All right, great. Well, why don't what I'd like to do then is for people who aren't familiar with the Minnesota Executive Function Scale, then I am going to give you a just a brief overview of what we do and some of the past work that we've done with Montessori schools. And then, if you don't mind, I can show you what the assessment looks like, and then answer any questions that you might have. So. First of all, as you probably already know, cognitive skills develop in very early childhood. I'm sure everybody knows this in the Montessori world. Um, and we're specifically focused on cognitive executive function skills. So these are your working memory, your cognitive flexibility, your inhibitory control. They develop in the prefrontal cortex very early in childhood. Here, I'm going to bring up a graphic here to show you what I'm talking about.
you may
Uh,
need you may need to just request sharing access.
oh, I might be able to do it. Oh, I'll send the request. Yep.
Yeah, you got it. Okay.
Okay, great. So let me see. I'll share my screen. So what we are focused on here is the prefrontal cortex, which is where these cognitive skills develop most rapidly between the ages of 0 and 6 years old. At this time in early brain development, the brain is highly active, developing quickly, especially in the prefrontal cortex, where these impulse control, working memory, and cognitive flexibility skills develop very quickly between the ages of 0 and 6. And what we find actually is that 40% of children uh, grow up with delays in their executive function development. These three skills together called executive function. Not only do 40% of children have delays in their executive function development, but your executive function skills, even over and above your intelligence or your IQ, are predictive of your later success in school and your career. And we find that all kinds of different children have executive function delays. This includes children, and a lot of children, I think, in Montessori fit this profile, gifted children who may be highly intelligent or have a special cognitive skill, something that they're really good at, but they also may struggle with things like attention deficit disorder, autism spectrum, other neurodiversity. And so while they may have a cognitive superpower, they also have some cognitive challenges that go along with that. Also, a lot of children who grow up in poverty or have had adverse childhood experiences, also we see that those children suffer with this cognitive skill development, and that could be because of trauma. It could be because of nutrition. It could be because they have a single parent who works nights, who isn't around to read with them, or maybe they don't have many siblings that they can play with. So a number of different reasons why a child may have delayed executive function skill development. But fortunately, we have found that these skills are malleable. They can be learned. With early intervention, you can build up these executive function skills, especially in early childhood. And one interesting thing that we found is that children who are in a Montessori education environment tend to develop these skills at a faster rate and to a higher level than children who are in our general school population. We have a number of hypotheses about why this might be. I'm sure many of you do here as well. but and I'm not a Montessori expert, but from what I understand, in a Montessori school, there's a lot of child agency, a lot of one-on-one working, a lot of turn taking, a lot of impulse control, and working memory challenges that children have to work with and overcome. And we believe that this is one of the reasons that a Montessori education is particularly good at developing these executive function skills in early childhood. Does anybody have, I don't know, Tim, if I'm supposed to mostly talk or mostly ask questions, but I'm interested to hear if anybody on this call, if they have their microphone available, is familiar with executive function skills, or whether you specifically look to address those skills inside your schools.
Well, earlier in the conversation, there was a lot of talk about how people are familiar with it. Some people are already familiar with MEFS. There are some people who don't know. So, I mean, I think this is a great conversation. And
Okay.
again, I encourage anyone who is willing and able, turn on your camera and unmute your mic and talk. By the way, Isaac, we had at least one person say, "Can you share any slideshow that you brought with you today?" Because people would love to have it. And
Yes. Right. Well, let me, yeah, hold on. Let me just pull that up here. I want to, hold on. Whoops.
you can send anything that you want to share, any articles. I know you sent me one.
I did. Yep. And I can definitely do that.
Yeah.
Let me pull up this. Okay. So, oh, you know what? Let me just go with this slide that I have here, and then I'm going to show you the actual assessment as we go through it, so you can get a feel for how it actually works.
I think
First,
people would like that.
yeah. So so this is the Minnesota Executive Function Scale. This is just an image of it, and I'll show you it in action in just a minute. But the highlight here is that, and you may be familiar that you can right now, you can go to a doctor's office. You can, a child can get a full cognitive assessment inside in a clinical setting. These can cost thousands of dollars. They're often used to diagnose things like ADHD or autism spectrum or low executive function development. But usually kids go into these clinical settings well after they've passed their window for early cognitive development, past the window where early intervention can have a huge impact. And they cost thousands of dollars. In a lot of cases, those children are tracked into some kind of a special education setting after they get a diagnosis of ADHD or autism or something like that. And that's about 20% of children in the general population. Then you have this whole other group that might not get a special education diagnosis, but they still suffer from these executive function skill delays. And to boot, this is so expensive, and it happens, relatively late during elementary school. And so what the MEFS provides for is a much less expensive universal screener that all children can take as early as age 2, but definitely they should do it by age 3. And what it will do is it gives them a percentile score that says how are their executive function skills developing relative to other children of the same months of age. And so what you can do is when your children come into your classroom for the first time, hopefully that's in early childhood, you can screen all children, excuse me, using this, it's a 5-minute digital card sorting game. Anybody can administer it. It's largely self-playing. It comes in 17 different languages. So, students who speak a language other than English can be guided through the 5-minute game by the MEFS. And given the instructions, they take it in about 5 minutes. All a teacher needs to do is to watch and make sure that they finish the assessment, but it's largely self-guided, very low cost. And then in 5 minutes, you get that percentile score. And you can keep on giving the MEFS assessment. It has many different play modes. And so kids don't see the same exact challenges when they take the assessment again. And that allows you to see whether or not a child is responding to interventions over the course of the year. And so you can track their brain development as they go through school, all the way from pre-K through elementary school and even beyond. And so another thing to know about the MEFS is there's obviously a lot of software out there claiming to do a lot of different things. But one really important thing to know is that the MEFS assessment, it was developed with grants from the National Science Foundation, the National Institutes of Health. It's been around for 15 years, and it is currently the gold standard assessment of cognitive skills used in scientific research all around the world. And here's a slide I really want to show you here that I think is really cool. There aren't that many assessments out there where your score on that assessment in early childhood is then predictive of your later academic success. But since the MEFS has been around for almost 15 years in one form or another, we actually have quite a bit of longitudinal data to show that your MEFS score in early childhood is predictive of your later academic success on state standardized tests. I know a lot of Montessori schools don't use state standardized tests, but some have to. And of course, for a lot of the Montessori schools we work with that are part of the public sector, like charter schools, they sometimes do have to take these state standardized tests. And so this later academic performance can be really important to independent schools as well as public schools. So in one study, we found that, and this was just the smallest one with 82 students, that the MEFS score in pre-K was predictive of the third grade reading and math scores on the NWEA MAP assessment. We did another study in Minnesota with 470 students, and we found that the MEFS in pre-K was highly predictive of these students' math and reading scores on the Minnesota state standardized test in third grade. And this is over and above those children's scores on the state standardized test in pre-K. So in other words, in pre-K, a lot of kids can achieve just fine in math and reading and other indicators of learning development in early childhood. But by the time they get to third grade, the children who haven't developed those cognitive skills that are so well practiced in a Montessori environment, they can no longer handle the academic rigor as they go up through the grades, and you start to see that academic achievement slipping. And so what this study showed in particular was that over and above the scores on a state standardized test in pre-K or first grade, the MEFS was even more predictive of their later academic achievement. And so that means that the MEFS is providing additional data about a child's readiness to succeed in school over and above the existing state standardized tests. And so it's really important information to have so that you know that that child can keep on succeeding as they go through school. And then this last one here, this was the largest study that I'm showing here today, although we are doing a meta-analysis right now covering over 30,000 children. This one showed that your MEFS score in second grade was highly predictive of your math and reading scores through grade 3, grade 4, and grade 5. And this is all on state standardized tests. So we see a lot of predictive validity about your MEFS score in early childhood against your long-term academic success. And so I think this is really important data for anybody who is interacting with a public school system or with parents. Both of those stakeholders very concerned about a child's long-term success, especially on state standardized tests. So any questions about that?
I think it was very informative, Isaac. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
So and again, if you don't have enough time today to accomplish everything you want, we are delighted to have you back again if you would like.
Okay, thank you. And we're going for a full hour or just another 9 minutes?
Another 9 minutes, unfortunately.
I'm sorry about that, Tim. I think I got the whole thing messed up today. I thought I had the invitation, but I didn't, so I apologize. Um,
Isaac,
I have a
yes.
question.
can I give, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
Oh, no, you go ahead first. I might
I just
remember.
wanted, I seriously, I just wanted to drop in two pieces. I work with 2-year-olds and we do executive functioning as a practical life skill, I had said earlier. I think we have started doing executive functioning for all the kids in the school. But I want to say, as a parent, aside from the expensive ed psych tests, which I've had one of my kids do, I have 4 kids, and watching 3 of them are neurodiverse.
Mhm.
Deciding when to go to the pediatrician was always a balance because it was going to come with a diagnosis that my husband considered a label. We perceived it differently. But it was still, even with me knowing all I know and with my background, it was still a back and forth internally. And what I love about this is that it makes it regular for all of the kids coming in. It doesn't come with any sort of letters, which I'm not against, but still. And it seems a more comfortable approach to the parents. And it gives the empowering piece that you look for in a diagnosis, which is what now, without having that piece that can be a little shocking to parents. Like, how is my child going to be perceived?
That's true, and and we don't really we really do try to avoid labeling a child, especially in early childhood, because since these skills are so malleable and you can make such a difference with early intervention, it's really, I think, most important to just know, and then do some interventions which can be highly effective. So yeah, I agree with you 100%. Although we do, that is one of the things that always comes up. Especially if a child were to do one of these assessments, we don't currently have parents administer this assessment to children directly. And one of the reasons is you never know how a parent will react to seeing a certain score. And since we express the MEF score in percentile terms, it can be very scary to see your child in the 30th percentile. And then for parents, especially who are really driving their children towards, their ideal of high performance, whatever that means, even a score in the 75th percentile, which we consider to be a very high executive function skill development, there's really no issues there, right? But for parents who are very interested in their children's, high performance, a 75 looks like a C. It doesn't look like an A. And so for that reason, we really like this assessment to be done in a school, or even by a clinician, but with a person in between the assessment and the parent, so that they can help the parent interpret the results and what to do next. Uh, so I don't know if that resonates with you at all, but we think that's really important. And while we do offer several of our own interventions, we have classroom activity guides, we have at-home activity guides, so that parents and teachers can help at sort of tier one, with all students build their EF skills. We also have a boxed curriculum that we use in some schools for sort of a higher intervention. When we work with Montessori schools, we tend not to employ any of our own interventions there, because the Montessori schools are usually perfectly capable, well versed in all of this, and know exactly what to do with each individual child, and they can often provide the best interventions. So when we work with Montessori schools, we tend to just provide the data, and then the schools and guides choose what to do with that information. I guess in the last few minutes, are there any other questions? And otherwise, I would like to show you what the MEFS assessment looks like when you play it.
Isaac, I'm going to very quickly say that I think there's an opportunity for you as an organization to help Montessori educators to figure out how do they use what's in the Montessori environment. That's something that probably your team would want to work with people from the Montessori community, but I think it would be very helpful, because what I hear is that Montessori educators they don't put together what should I do? They're looking for a roadmap.
Hmm. Yeah, so we can certainly provide that kind of guidance. Our founders, Dr. Stephanie Carlson and Dr. Phil Zalazzo, have been working in early childhood education for decades. We've been working very closely with Montessori schools for a decade as well. And so yes, we can help to provide some of that guidance about, some of the things that you may already be offering inside your learning environments, that you can do more of, and then also how to measure children's response to those interventions. So does it make sense for me to demo this, or should we save
No,
it for later?
I don't think so. I think what we should do is plan another session. I'd like to invite you back with whoever you want from your team, David Ayer, to come from National Center in the Montessori Center for, excuse me, Center for Montessori, National Center for Montessori in the public sector, and our friend Nikki Magnuson. I think it would be a great conversation if we allowed everyone to sort of reiterate where they fit in, how these things might be used together, and give you an opportunity to show this more carefully. John, you had a question you were gonna ask. You want to jump in?
Well, yeah, I have a very quick question, and I'm sorry if I missed it in your presentation, Isaac. Do you know of studies that have done a correlation between executive function in a Montessori growth in a Montessori environment versus in other environments that are similar but not Montessori?
It's a great question, John, and I wouldn't call it a study, but what we are able to do is look at our own data and see what what the scores are and what the growth trajectory is for students in with our Montessori partners. And so we could pull together those data for you and show you a comparison. I can tell you anecdotally, and we did this a couple of years ago when I first arrived at Reflection Sciences in 2023. And at that time, we did see a huge difference in EF growth in Montessori schools versus the general school population. But let me get some updated information for you with fresh data, and yeah, we could definitely provide that. I think yeah, sure. One of the last things I'll leave you with is this here is our what we call instructional plan progress, and it allows schools to look at, both for an individual student, this is at a population level, how executive function scores are changing for children over the course of an academic year. You can see at the baseline, this is kids coming in at the beginning of the year. This is early childhood. This is pre-K. You can see it's just about, in this case, just about 40%, maybe a little more than 40% of kids are scoring at the approaching or meets low band of the executive function score. And that's pretty much what you would expect in a general population. About half the kids scoring below 40% of the kids scoring below the 40th percentile. And in this school, through Tier 1 interventions, what they were able to do is you could see that a lot of the kids that were in the meets low band moved up into the meets band. And you didn't get as much movement out of the approaching band. Some of these children have more special needs that need to be addressed with a Tier 2 intervention, maybe going to that child psychologist. But what you can do is take a lot of the kids that are sort of approaching the regular executive function trajectory and get them back onto that trajectory so that they can continue to succeed as academic rigor increases from year to year as they get older. So,
Isaac, thank you so much for being here. Before you leave, I know that Reka and others are here from outside the United States. I would imagine that, especially since I think you now have an online version of the assessment, right?
yeah, oh yes, that's right. Yep.
Could it not be used outside the United States if someone wanted?
It sure can. And, the MEFS is available in 17 different languages. It is a web-based application. We like people to do it on a tablet or a touch screen, especially for younger children. That's the best environment to use it on. But if you have a tablet, a touch screen device, you can do it with a mouse. But yes, any internet-enabled device, and 17 languages.
Great. So again, I hope it helps those of you who are outside the United States. Please, Reka, I see you're unmuting.
I said thank you for that. I mean, that was a nice information. I was wondering about the access of it in another country.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So, yep.
Clarified that very.
Yep, and I think also, especially on the assessment side, I think the price point I think can really works, no matter what the sort of the exchange rates are between the United States and another country. So yes, we do a lot of work internationally, all over the place, all over the globe.
Well, again, you're going to send me whatever you want to share from this session. I'm going to set up a time when you can join us again, and then we'll see if the others that I mentioned can join, because I think that will build a stronger. And Isaac, just so you know, I know that my friend Martin Pyre has been anxious for us to really make more Montessori educators aware of what you're doing. And for a while, a lot of us were talking about it, and then I think COVID got in the way and it fell off the screen. So I'm going to do what I can to make multiple opportunities for people to know what you're doing and to know about opportunities between you and DERS and Chancy and Bruce and any other assessments that are out there that can help us form an objective determination or a confirmation of what we as Montessorians are seeing in our shall we say anecdotal observations, which are not scientific, but they are. Um,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, I apologize for my lateness. I wish I had been on time. I had some trouble with the invite and the link. My fault. Um, but yes, I think when we talk to Montessori schools, especially the Montessori schools in the public sector, they often want to have a way to measure children's progress that is recognized by a school district or a state department of education, something where the Montessori school can say, hey, look, even though our curriculum, our sequencing of learning is not the same as what you're doing in your public education system, here's a metric that still shows the kind of progress that you want to see to show that we're preparing children for school and that we're educating them in a way that a state school board of education can recognize. And one of the things that's happening now is states are increasingly adopting the MEFS as part of their quality rating and improvement systems at the state level. And so a MEFS score is more and more often now an accepted score of child learning and development that'll be recognized by a public school district or a state board of education. So
that's
that could be a
great to know.
valuable metric to have as well.
Again, Isaac, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks
Thank
to
you, Tim.
all of you who are here. And, this has been a light attended version out of the 300 or so people that normally are on this list. Hopefully, when we gather next, which will probably be in August, we'll have a larger group as people begin to come back to school.
Great. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks, Isaac. And just to remind everyone, the recording will be sent to you in an email probably tomorrow. Isaac, you'll get it too. Also, I will post it publicly on the Montessori Foundation's YouTube channel. So anyone will be able to find it. Please feel free to share it with friends. We'll see you next week, everyone. This is the
Thank you.
Montessori Foundation signing off.